Right, morning everybody. Sorry we're a couple of minutes late starting. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Planning Committee for 14th of December. My name is Councillor Sue Craig, I'm Chair of the committee. Please can I remind everybody to turn their phones, etc. to silent so we don't get any unexpected interruptions. The meeting's been filmed and the recording will be available on the council website, so anyone who's speaking will be on that recording unless they let us know in advance, please. And now I'll turn to the Democratic Services Officer, Karina Haskins, to read out the emergency evacuation procedure.
Thank you, Chair. If the continuous alarm sounds, you must evacuate the building by one of the designated exits and proceed to the named assembly point. The designated exits are signposted. From this room, use the main door and then the main exit of the building. The assembly point for this building is in Orange Grove on the green outside Browns. Thank you.
Thank you, Karina. And do we have any apologies for absence and or substitutions, please?
Yes, apologies from Councillor Paul Crossley, apologies from Councillor Shelley Bromley, and Councillor Ruth Malloy is substituting.
Thank you very much. And can I ask whether we have any declarations of interest this morning? Thank you, Councillor Hodge.
Yes, Chair, I have the second application coming before us is on my property, so I'll be stepping away from the meeting.
Thank you. Nothing else from anyone? No? There's no urgent business agreed by the Chair, so agenda item 5, Karina will just let us know how the statements and questions will work for the public this morning.
Thank you. Speakers will be called to speak immediately after the case officer has made their presentation about the application. The order of speakers and the time allowed for speaking will be as follows. Objectors to the application will be allowed 3 minutes in total. Supporters of an application will be allowed 3 minutes in total. Ward councillors not on the committee who have indicated that they wish to speak about an application may do so for a maximum of 5 minutes. Speeches will be timed by the traffic light system you can see on the table next to me. At the start, the light will be green and will turn to amber when there is 1 minute of speaking time remaining. When the light turns red, speakers should immediately conclude their remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The minutes have been circulated. Can I have a nomination to agree them, please, on a second? Councillor Jackson.
I'll propose that they're correct, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jackson. And Councillor McPhee, second. Thank you. Okay. So we didn't have any site visits, so we're going to the main plans list, which is short today, 2 items. If I could turn to the first one and invite the case officer to present his report, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is a retrospective plan application for the erection of an outside bar and deck seating area at the Hare and Hounds on Lansdowne Road in Lansdowne in Bath. This is the site location, so you just see the Hare and Hounds there on the east side of the Lansdowne Road, and then here's an aerial imagery of actually before the development was undertaken. Just to give a brief sort of site history before we go into the main presentation. In 2018, as detailed in the officer report, negative pre-application advice was given by the council in relation to a proposal that did include an outside bar. In late 2020, I think December 2020, the applicant built the outside bar and the outside deck in without the benefit of planning permission. The Plan Enforcement Department did receive a complaint at this time. On the advice of the enforcement officers, the applicant submitted a pre-application inquiry in January 2021 for the proposed retention of the outside bar and deck in. This was given a negative response, but was given suggestions about how the scheme could be made more acceptable. The applicant then submitted in 2020 a retrospective application for the retention of the outside bar and deck in. The scheme was considered unacceptable due to the identified harm of the setting of the heritage asset and the conservation area. However, at this time, obviously the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, the council had a policy of allowing commercial premises, mainly restaurants and bars, to construct outdoor seating areas to allow them to continue trading. And it was given a temporary 12-month permission for this purpose. The condition was attached to this consent requiring by the 1st of May 2022 a scheme for the restoration of the land and removal of the bar and decking be submitted and approved by the LPA. This wasn't submitted, and the application expired on the 1st of August 2022. And then this application was submitted in late August of the same month. So this is the plan for the outside bar and decking area. You can see the main Hare and Hounds pub on the bottom, on the south side of the site, which is Grade 2 listed. The site is within the conservation area as well. You can see the decking occupies sort of the lower terrace. There's some photos later on in my presentation showing it occupies the lower terrace of the garden, and it's accessed by 2 staircases, one from the main car park of the pub and one from the first terrace area the pub has at the rear of the rear garden as well. This is a drawing of the proposed bar. Just shows the elevations there and essentially what the size of the structure. So this is the pub from the main Lansdowne Road. The development is actually, if you see the conservatory at the rear of the pub, the land drops significantly away after this point, and the development is just over the drop-off point. This is the other direction. The development can't be seen from the main Lansdowne Road. This was the development before. This is the pub prior to the development taking place. The decking was installed on the area where you see the white tables located, and the bar is just over to the right-hand side of the screen where you can see a bin and some gravel. So that's the location of that. You can see the terrace area mainly behind the pub on the raised area there. You can also see one of the staircases that leads down to the bottom terrace area there where the decking has been constructed. I do apologise about my photos. I seem to have taken them in the middle of a foggy day, but I hope they do show the what the site has built essentially. This is the decking area that has been constructed and the outside bar over to the left-hand side of the screen. And you can also see on the right-hand side one of the staircases that comes down from the main car park. This is another view close-up of the outside bar area. You can also see the staircase there that comes down from the terrace area directly behind the pub. This is a view of the decking taken from the outside area directly behind the pub, and obviously you can see the bar there as well. This is another view taken from just off the on the walkway just off the car park as you enter the pub. The only part of the development here you can see is the handrails that border the decking on the south side of the site. This is another view from the bar pub itself as well. This is one of the staircases that mainly comes down into the from the main terrace area of the pub down to the decking that's subject to the application. This is the other staircase that comes down from the main car park. And that's just a view as well from. This keeps going on. There you go. That's just another view from the main car park as well. And this is a view from one of the vantage points given by the applicant in his submission. You can just see the pub there in the middle of the photo. Sort of long distance views of this, because it's relatively close to the main pub. The built form does appear to sort of be as one item, so it doesn't appear sort of prominent on the landscape as such. And obviously the officer recommendation is to refuse owing to the setting of the harm of the lesser substantial harm of the setting of the listed building and the wider conservation area, and it is believed that the public benefits of the proposal do not outweigh the less than significant harm to the listed building. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. So we have 3 speakers on this one. If I could have, first of all, Stuart Chorley to the front. you'd like to turn the microphone on when you're ready. That's on.
I think that's on. Can everyone hear me?
You can move it nearer you if it's too far away.
Point it that way. My booming voice is too much. I'll sit back a bit. Okay. Good morning, councillors. Thanks very much for this opportunity. I'm speaking against the proposal, just for clarity. As I say, my name's Stuart Chorley. I'm a local resident. I've lived in Bath for 35 years. All of those years within very close proximity to the Hare and Hounds. And it's a pub I've visited off and on over those many years. Enjoy my visits there. And I've seen its ups and downs over that time, and it's very good to see that it's still a thriving and successful business. There's always been outside seating at the pub, with many benches dotted around what was the grass in the lower garden terrace area. And I think some of those pictures indicated that. Although there were quite a few benches, they were set in the grassed rural location, which made them quite unobtrusive and also appropriate for the location. So they were there, and probably as many as are there now, but they blended in with into the location. Compared to the latest development, which is, as you've seen, a very large expanse of wooden decking completely covering the lower garden area. There are dozens of sort of regimented benches and umbrellas, and it completely alters the rural nature of the garden. And sort of viewed from the terrace above it, it's very much visually jarring with the stunning views beyond. It's completely incongruous with the pub, sadly, and its setting, which is absolutely astounding and has won awards for its views. The Baines planning officer, as we've just heard, agrees that the setting of this decking and the bar is not appropriate. All these permanent works, as we've heard, were constructed during the pandemic without any planning permission. Many other local pubs set up temporary outside accommodation during the pandemic, which they have since had to remove. So this application is an attempt to regularise major unpermitted development via a retrospective application. The applicant has understandably publicised a good deal of customer support for him to retain the decking area and the outside bar, whereas the Baines planning officer has said that it breaches a number of well-established planning regulations and protocols, and permission for it to remain should be refused. The question therefore arises, is it appropriate for established planning regulations to be set aside in the face of any populist opposition? Such an action, I think, would fly in the face of the many other publicans and businesses who have taken down their temporary outside extensions, which were allowed only during the pandemic. So I therefore trust that planning regulation will prevail in this occasion. So I fully support the Council recommendation that this retrospective application should be refused. It's neither necessary nor appropriate. The decking area can easily be returned to natural grass with similar levels of outside seating capacity.
Bring your comments to close, please.
Effects on pub trade and employment will be minimal. So I request the Council to refuse this retrospective application. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart.
Apologies for the overrun.
Okay. And if I could have Joe Cousins, please. I'd like to put the microphone on and start when you're ready.
Excuse me. Right. Well, thank you to the Chair and the Vice Chair for agreeing to hear this application. This application is about the balance between heritage harm and public benefits. Your officers say the proposal is harmful. We say that the harm is either non-existent or tiny, and that the public benefits are huge. Your officers concede that the harm caused is less than substantial, in which case planning law is clear. The decision to approve or not should be made on whether the public benefits delivered outweigh any harm caused. We believe they overwhelmingly do. We submitted a 38-page report from a renowned heritage expert with 35 years of experience who argues the development causes no or very low levels of harm at best. The bar and decking are beautifully designed using high-quality materials. They are not visible from any public viewpoint. The only people who can see them are the very customers who would be coming to the pub to enjoy them. Many of the over 4,000 people who supported our initial applications said that they think it looks fantastic. The bar and deck are featured in several national press articles on best beer gardens. The picture editors, whose job it is to select the best images for their articles, consistently choose to feature the Hare and Hounds. One even chose to feature a shot not of the view, but looking back at the pub across the decking area. Since its origins in the 17th century, the pub has undergone many changes. This proposal is the latest chapter in its evolution. The pub is a business and needs to be commercially viable. It will not survive if it is unable to evolve. On the question of public benefits, your officers claim that outdoor seating on the grass would work just as well. If that was the case, why would we have spent thousands of pounds building the decking? Customers much prefer being on a firm, stable, flat surface. Grass is uneven and is slippery and muddy when wet. The bar and decking unquestionably improve the pub's viability, and the national planning policy states that ensuring a building's optimal viable use is a key factor that should be considered in the decision to approve or not. This is absolutely the case here. Local people love the outdoor bar. Removal would be a commercial catastrophe for the pub and hugely disappointing for the community. The development does not harm neighbours. We are on good terms with our neighbours, and several of them have submitted supporting comments for the application. Indeed, our very closest neighbour says he doesn't have an issue with the bar and deck whatsoever. The proposal directly benefits the wider Bath economy too. I spoke to a couple who came to the pub and stayed in Bath directly as a result of reading about it in the Telegraph. They enjoyed their visit so much they booked a return visit to Bath. The economic challenges that pubs are facing now are beyond dire. Rocketing costs across the board, chronic staff shortages and falling consumer demand and confidence make the challenges of the pandemic look like a teddy bear's picnic. Who gains from a decision to refuse this application? Certainly not us, nor our customers, or the wider Bath economy. Our neighbours support it, and the development is enjoyed by many people who value it enormously. It is not an eyesore.
I could ask you to bring
an
your
attractive addition that is not visible
statement
from
to
the
close,
road
please.
or any other public land. We urge the committee to support the application. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, if I could have Councillor Mark Elliott, please. Yeah, it's on.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Committee. I wish we weren't here. I wish Mr Cousins hadn't built a decking bar without planning permission in the first place, and I wish that in the time that the temporary permission was granted, a negotiated position between the Council and Mr Cousins had been found. But that isn't what's happened, so here we are. Whatever the history of the application, I think the decision today rests on something relatively straightforward. The Conservation Officer says that there is less than substantial harm to the listed building caused by the deck and bar. The Case Officer has therefore weighed that less than substantial harm against the public benefits of the deck and bar and decided that the less than substantial harm nevertheless outweighs the benefits. I'm asking the committee to reconsider that decision. This is obviously a matter of judgment. How much less than substantial is the harm to the listed building? I completely acknowledge that I am not a Conservation Officer, but whilst I can see that the deck and bar are obviously completely different in style to a 17th century public house, I have to say they don't seem very harmful to me. In fact, I think they're quite attractive. Incongruous? Perhaps a little, I guess, from a purely architectural point of view, but not from the point of view of a working pub. And it's evident that a very large number of the members of the general public don't find this particularly harmful. In addition, they're structures which could be removed at a later date without there being any obvious lasting harm. With regard to benefit, again, I admit a lack of expertise in running a pub, but I can see that Mr Cousins' argument, that having outdoor space more usable for more of the year without it becoming muddy and having the convenience of an outdoor serving area are both definite economic benefits for the pub and therefore for the local economy. Mr Cousins would presumably not have built the deck and bar if he didn't feel it was going to add to the economic value of his business, and having a well-run, successful pub in this building is of much more public benefit than it failing, as so many pubs and hospitality venues currently are. I'm sure the deck and bar aren't the sole factor in determining the success of the pub, but I'm equally sure that they do increase the economic viability of the business. So we're left measuring a definite but difficult to quantify economic benefit to the viability of the pub, and therefore the area, and against an undefined but acknowledged less than substantial amount of conservation harm. I make no criticism of the officer for coming to the conclusion he did, but on balance, I believe the benefits do outweigh the harm. I respectfully disagree with the decision and invite the committee to reverse it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. Okay. So we can turn to questions for the officer. Councillor Jackson.
I've got a number of questions where I really don't quite understand, and I'm afraid I didn't have time to go through all the documents behind this application, so I'm a bit dependent on the officer's report and what we've heard this morning. But my first question relates to whether we should be permitting a development where there is no disabled access that I can see. I mean, I'm not going to propose a site visit, but if we were to go there, I could not get down to that decking, and I'm not in a wheelchair. And so the question is it appropriate? What does the legislation tell us? I thought perhaps our legal officer might be able to expand that a little bit. Second question, we've heard a great deal about the decking, but I am wondering, well, first of all, I'd like to see what the part of the pub is that's immediately next to the decking, because that looked quite modern to me, but I couldn't see on the pictures we've got here. What exactly is the nearest extension bit? Is that 20th century? In which case, I can't see that the decking's so jarring. But I'd just like to know a little bit more about the main building. But the other question is, the officer has focused on the decking and its impact, and you know, that's a pretty important point. I am wondering about the bar. I mean, I hate to say it, but is it a material consideration that outside bar looks rather like the shed on my allotment? I mean, it looks a bit like a garden shed, not an appropriate kind. I mean, is that important, is what I'm asking, that it actually does look quite rural, quite like a shed on an allotment.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Do you want to address those?
Yeah, sure. I'll jump into the first question about the disability access. So the site before, obviously prior to the development taking place, was not accessible to people with disabilities very easily because of the access to being these two steps here. The decking itself obviously isn't built up. There's a small step onto the decking itself. So if one person was able to get down there, I believe they would be able to use the decking. However, obviously, as the site previously was not accessible to people with disabilities, it was determined that there's no further impact on people with there's no further significant impact on people with disabilities because they weren't able to access this area prior to the development taking place. It was a material consideration in the assessment, but the main assessment here under this application was the less significant harm to the conservation area in the listed building. So as the application was recommended for refusal, it was a material consideration, but it wasn't assessed as part of fully assessed as part of the report.
So can I just check whether our legal officer has anything to add to that, please?
So I'm not aware of any legal requirement to provide disabled access. So I'm not aware of a law that says you must provide disabled access in these situations. I can't comment on planning policy. Is that a sufficient answer, or are there other factors that you wanted to dig into?
There is one more thing I wanted to add on that one as well. Sort of to create disabled access to this development would also possibly require significant engineering operations, considering this is one of the main access down to the decking itself, and it would be questionable as to whether that development would be appropriate in terms of the listed building as well. Your other question, you might have to remind me on it, unfortunately.
So there was a question of
the shed, yes. So obviously, as part of planning application, we do assess the materials and the appearance of buildings, and it was assessed that part of the identified less substantial harm was the materials that is used wasn't felt appropriate in the setting of a listed building. So that's part of the assessment that is mentioned in the officer report as well. So it was assessed that the materials were not appropriate in that location.
So I think there was another question about the proximity of how old the part of the building is right
so
next
that
to
part
the...
on the right-hand side, unfortunately, I don't have that information to hand. I don't know that, unfortunately. Because my application didn't relate to the building itself, it just relates to the setting and the decking. I don't know that information.
Well, with respect, Chair, I mein, if we're arguing that this is impacting on a listed building, it really would be helpful if perhaps Councillor Hodge knows, if we could know whether that's an ancient or a modern bit of the building. Obviously, the bit on with the, not the gable end, what do you call it? The bit on the left of it, that's obviously old. It's this little bit here on the right that I'm not so sure about. Is it Victorian Gothic or...
Okay, so I don't think we have that information. Know. So, do we have any more questions, Councillor McPhee?
Thank you, Councillor. I can't go into them in detail, obviously, because it's part of a confidential pre-application inquiry. I will say that they were significant. So that's what I'll say on that one.
Okay, any more questions from anyone? Councillor Hounsell.
Thank you. It's the question of the public benefit, really, because there's assertions that there is a public benefit, but have there been any figures submitted that compares business taking place in this area that we can see before the decking and after the decking? Because if there's no change, there's no public benefit.
Thank you, Councillor. So the information submitted by the applicant included a breakdown of how many people were employed in the outside bar, which I believe was seven full-time equivalent employees. Apart from that, no information was sort of submitted on detailed business takings before the decking was installed and afterwards. But obviously, we've had quite significant economic differences between the two periods as well. So, but the applicant didn't submit any sort of detailed figures on the taking to the pub prior and after.
Councillor Malloy.
Thank you. It's just a factual question, and I think I know the answer already, but I want to ask, as the first condition of the previous planning application that was approved, that then expired on the 1st of August, is that right, this year, said that, it was temporary permission, and that a scheme of works and a programme of implementation should be submitted for approval by the local planning authority on or prior to the 1st of May. And so I just wondered if that happened or not. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. No, that condition was not complied with. So no submissions are made to the LPA regarding the scheme of works to restore the land and the removal of the structures.
Any more questions? Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions. So, I mean, first of all, I'm just trying to understand the layout here. So this decking is not connected to the fabric of the building in any way, shape or form?
So I'll jump in quickly.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Sure.
There are these two handrails. That is the only connection between the listed building and the decking. There was a listed building application that was submitted as part of this application originally. It was deemed that was not necessary because essentially these are sort of de minimis connections to the listed building, and should the committee decide to overturn the officer recommendation, it would be doubtful whether it would be expedient to pursue enforcement action on that aspect of it. So that's the only aspect that is connected to the main listed building.
So on that basis then, if that piece of land was under different ownership, would we still be having this conversation today?
Yes, because it is still in the setting of a Grade 2 listed building.
Right, okay. Now, on the issue, I know Duncan raised the issue of the commercial aspects, but obviously I guess it's very difficult to assess the commercial viability because it's been over a lockdown period. The hospitality market has had a huge change over the last few years. But did we? I know you gave temporary permission for this construction. Was there any discussion about extending that, considering that the hospitality industry is probably suffering a worse situation now than it did even during the pandemic?
There hasn't been. The applicant didn't make any overtures to the planning department regarding the application while it was still permitted prior to the expiration. The council had a time on direction sort of guidance from central government to allow business premises like this to have outside seating areas and stuff like that temporarily, and the council decided that a 12-month permission would be acceptable. Obviously, as a pandemic, the government, obviously, that guidance has now been recalled because the government there's not an ongoing coronavirus pandemic in the government's view. So there's no further guidance of government regarding the sort of the current economic pressures relating to government. So the council don't have anything to base that decision on to extend the permission.
Thank you. And can I just ask for one clarification on the question that Eleanor asked about disabled access? So this isn't sufficient to trigger a requirement to assess disabled access. So where would the trigger point be? At what point would we trigger a requirement for us to assess a disabled access to this?
I'm not aware of that. I don't know if Chris wants to jump in or David wants to jump in on that one, but I'm not aware of any sort of trigger point. I know of trigger points relating to sort of housing developments, but I'm not aware of anything regarding that could bring into this development.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, disabled access and disability access and so on is generally speaking a matter for the building regulations. Where it comes in under planning control really is where it's specifically specified within planning policy. For example, as Sam mentioned, certain residential developments, there's a requirement for certain layouts which are designed to meet disability requirements. But there is no legal requirement for this decking to be served by a ramp, for example, and there's no planning policy that would require the committee or the decision taker to require that either. So, by and large, it is a matter for the building regulations.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Davis?
Yes, just one thing I just want to clarify. I can read and I've heard. I just want to be sure. It does quite clearly say that this area, the bar and the decking area, subject that supports 7.5 full-time equivalent employees. It does seem an awful lot of employees for that area that we're looking at, but that's clearly what it's written and that's what you've said. I haven't misheard and I haven't misread.
That is what's written. I'm not an expert in the pub trade. I'm not sort of within my job description. But as I said, I have to go off the information submitted by the applicant, and that's what they submitted in this occasion.
Okay, any more questions before we move to the debate? Is it a question, Councillor Hodge?
Yes, so I've got a couple of questions, the officer. I just wanted to be clear on the extent of the dialogue with the applicant over the period of time and what the officers felt they would have liked to have seen and what would have been appropriate.
Thank you, Councillor. I can't sort of go into detail because you're assessing today the application in front of you. So sort of my information on sort of the site history to give context to the application, how this application has come before committee. Unfortunately, you have to assess it as it is in front of you today. Officer dialogue, there has been significant dialogue regarding sort of over the years from 2018 up until at least the start of 2021 regarding how the scheme could be made acceptable. And this submission today is the same as the submission that was given temporary consent in 2021. The plans are the same plans that were submitted. There's been no changes since the application in 2021.
I've just got a second question. It was just about there were conditions on the temporary permission in relation to hours of use and what it could be used for, just as a bar, a dining area with no music, outside entertainment, and also conditions on lighting. If the committee were inclined to permit, could the same conditions be applied and negotiated or agreed at this stage?
Thank you, Councillor. I believe they would be applicable if the committee did decide to permit the application.
Okay. Any more questions? No? Right, we'll move to the debate, and I'll ask Councillor Hodges, the ward councillor, to open the debate.
Hello, everybody. The Hare and Hounds is a popular pub in my ward, and I've just got a few initial thoughts that I've wanted to share with you. In common with the rest of the hospitality sector, it has faced exceedingly challenging times through the pandemic, and there's no real evidence of this situation easing. I'd like to acknowledge the concerns of the officers. The pub is both listed and in our conservation area. I would have liked there to be more of a dialogue, perhaps leading to something of a smaller scale, and perhaps with the introduction, a benefit of disabled access. I agree in the report that highways issues are a problem. There's only limited car parking space. The parking is on the brow of Lansdowne Road, where the traffic is quite fast, and a number of residents have approached me for support for traffic regulation orders for parking restrictions because of conflicts with parking. I've also noted that many comments of support, about a third of them are from Lansdowne Ward residents, and I personally have received a range of views. I'm feeling at the moment, on balance, that a commercial investment has been made at a difficult time, and I'm mindful that we might want to talk about the merits of the decking, that both structures are not permanent, and this is an important consideration for me. I'm also mindful that there is the option of permitting the application with the conditions that were applied previously, which will give some confidence with residential amenity that there would be no provision of dancing or entertainment or music. But with those initial thoughts, I'd just leave it to hear the debate of the rest of the committee.
Thank you, Councillor Hodge. Right. Who would like to? Councillor Davis.
I find this quite difficult, and I still can't get my head around 7.5 full-time just on that area there. And the dancing and those different things, if they want to change it, that would go to licensing committee. We could ask for as it is, but it would be licensing committee, not this committee, which should make a decision on those things. As I sit on licensing, I know that's what comes before us. So I do worry that the conditions cannot be, they might be maintained at this moment in time, but they could easily come to licensing and ask for a change, as they've done with what is a temporary condition here, and they're trying to make it permanent. So I am quite concerned about this application in my way. And when you say about the highways, the issues there, if this really does mean 7.5 people just on that area there must be an awful lot of people going in and out of there, because wages won't be cheap to attract people these days, because, as they've said, hospitality's struggling to get people. So I'm finding the commercial aspect doesn't quite tally in my head at the moment, so I'll be interested in the debate.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Any more contributions from anyone? Councillor Jackson.
Yeah, I'm a bit surprised about the response to Councillor Hodges' question, because it's my understanding that there is on the part of our officers a duty to consult. And I'm not quite sure exactly how we define it, but I had always understood that as a dialogue with the applicant, and perhaps we could have a bit of an explanation as to what constitutes fulfilling that duty to consult. And secondly, I'm not clear at all why we haven't got, I mean, that's sort of part of that question of consultation. I'm not clear why we haven't got a listed buildings application consent with this. I mean, we normally hear them together. So the question is, are we at a subsequent meeting, if we decide to delegate to permit, then going to see a listed building application? And finally, looking at those steps, I mean, I do think the applicant has a point. To get meals and drinks up and down those steps from the main bar would be hazardous, I would have thought, especially if it's been raining or, you know, the weather has not been very good. So I don't know if we could condition improving the access, because looking at the bank, I wouldn't have thought it was impossible to put some sort of, or put another handrail in, put in something that would make it a safer option and better communications with the main building. But we have to consider what we've got before us, and I think it is part of the argument that you could not very easily get a tray full of drinks down those steps, even if you had managed to find an employee to do it, but that's not a planning consideration as I understand it, the fact that it's extremely difficult to get bar staff at the moment. Is that correct?
So, if any of our planning officers can...
I mean, I can come back, Chair, on the first question there. I mean, obviously, there's a duty. The local planning authority has a duty to consult statutory consultees, which would include the neighbours and so on. In terms of, if you were referring to a duty to sort of negotiate or have ongoing discussions, that's something that's encouraged, but it's not a legal duty. But in terms of statutory consultees and so on, we've done everything that the regulations require us to do in this case.
Okay, that clarified that particular point. So I think the other ones were why no LBA, that listed buildings application, and whether if we were inclined to delegate to permit, something like disabled access could be conditioned. I think those were the other 2 points that you wanted clarification on.
Am I allowed to jump in now? Or, yeah, so I just wasn't sure if it was officer questions. So the listed building application, there was a listed building application submitted with this originally. We determined that it wasn't necessary because the only connection to the listed building is these 2 handrails, which can be removed. And it was deemed that the inclusion of the listed building application for the purpose of these 2 handrails was sort of excessive. If the committee did decide to overturn this recommendation, the planning department would not be asking for a listed building consent application for those 2 handrails.
And I think because what we're considering here is harm to the setting and the conservation area, yes, not harm to the listed building itself.
Yes, and of those, yeah, essentially, you are correct. And the other question was regarding disability access. Considering the topography of the site, if it would be highly likely that any disability access to the decking would in itself require planning permission, which wouldn't be able to be secured by condition. So you have to look at the application in front of you sort of today in that aspect with it.
Yes, Councillor Jackson.
Well, of course, I don't know this site, but if you look at the retaining wall underneath the terrace and the boxes, that would seem to me to be the same material, approximately, as the steps. So it's not the rail that connects it to the listed building, it's the steps from the bottom there. It really does look like, I mean, the officer will know, it looks like the same sort of stonework.
So the steps were there prior to the development taking place. Let me try and find photograph. The steps, well, you can't see it on there, but the steps were there prior to development taking place, and the steps aren't connected to the decking in any way. They're not connected, they simply abut each other. So the decking isn't tied, as far as I'm aware, the decking isn't actually tied into those concrete steps.
Are they concrete, not stone?
To be honest with you, from looking at them, they look like concrete, but I didn't sort of study the material of the steps while I did my site visit, so I don't know the material of them, unfortunately. But the only, as agreed by the applicant's agent as well, the only reason that the listed building application was submitted was for the handrails.
Any more for the debate? Oh, sorry, looking in the right direction. Councillor Hounsell.
Thank you, Chair. During the COVID period, the reason why the government encouraged or helped to support outdoor seating, the primary reason was public health. Viability of businesses was a secondary consideration. The main purpose was for public health reasons. There are, as has been said, there are many examples where businesses provided temporary outdoor seating but have removed the constructions or whatever that were built in that time. There's no evidence or significant evidence of the economic benefit in front of us. We are here to apply planning principles, planning guidance, planning law. We're not here to be charitable, if you like, to a commercial enterprise. I hope I'm a great supporter of local business. I support small and medium-sized businesses in my area a great deal. But to be fair to everyone, the same rules have to apply to everyone. The officers made a clear judgment, and a very reasoned judgment, and at this moment I can't see any reason to go against the case officer.
Thank you, Councillor Hounsell. Councillor McPhee.
I found myself very persuaded by Councillor Elliott. It's a difficult thing to run a pub these days. There is a trend towards more outdoor eating, and I think many pubs will go that way, and therefore I have a lot of sympathy. The point is that if you are going to do something with the intention of applying for planning, you ought to make it compliant. And it seems to me that this person, the applicant, has not been very flexible. And that's where I mark it down. So I find myself wanting to do it. I think it looks perfectly nice. It's not directly connected to the listed building. I think it will bring commercial benefits. So I would lean more towards delegate to permit.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McPhee. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. I mean, I don't think we can ignore the fact that the hospitality industry has gone through a huge upheaval over the last few years. And our hospitality industry is trying to adapt to a very changed market. And there's no evidence that it's ever going to return to the way it was pre-pandemic. So we've got to allow our hospitality industries to evolve to suit a changed market. And as Councillor McPhee has pointed out, a lot of that does revolve around more outside eating. I mean, people are still concerned, even today, about being indoors in enclosed environments, with whether that's flu, whether that's COVID, and that's not likely to change anytime soon. So I think we have to allow our hospitality industries to evolve. Bath survives on the hospitality industry. It's one of our biggest industries, and we need to be supportive of that. The issue of the actual decking, I mean, the fact that it's not attached to the fabric of the building. So the effect on the listed building for me is quite minimal. The materials used are natural, sustainable materials that could be removed if a future owner of the building decided that they wanted to return it back to a piece of grass. It could easily be done, probably in a matter of a day. So I'm not really overly concerned about that. So I think, on balance, I think I'm quite supportive of. I don't find what they've done unattractive. The only area I have concerns about are, I think that they could enhance that bar to make it more suitable to its environment. I think I agree with Councillor Jackson. It does look a bit like a garden shed, and perhaps they could put a bit more effort into making that look more fitting to its environment. And if they were able at some point to try and find some way of providing some disabled access to that location, I think that would enhance their offering as a hospitality location as well. But on balance, I don't really have an issue with this development.
Okay. Councillor Hodge.
Yes, I'd just like to make a point about the financial contributions. I noticed the applicant has agreed to the financial contribution if it was if there was if the application was permit, and I'm just thinking of the future steps. If it is if it's refused in the future and there is not enforcement is a separate issue, then we would lose that gain of the decking would be retained with the use without the. I'm just thinking about without that financial contribution in the long run. That's just something to bear in mind, I think.
Okay, Councillor Jackson.
I was hoping that Councillor Hounsell was going to make a proposition to support the officer's recommendation, because although I am extremely uneasy about some aspects of the officer's report, I think on balance we cannot allow ourselves to make assumptions about the future viability of this establishment. And I do assure you I'm not letting my Methodist principles get in the way about the question of consumption of alcohol. But what we have not talked about anywhere that I can see is the fact that an open area like this is very beneficial for smokers to pursue their habit. Having smoke near space is something that most pubs actually like. It's just the scale of this, the design of it, and the shed that's my problem, and the impact of said shed on listed building visually. So I'm afraid I'm going to move the officer's recommendation.
Okay.
I hope that Councillor Hounsell will second.
Councillor Hounsell, you seconding that?
I just hesitated because it's clearly a very marginal decision, but you heard what I had to say before, so I will second the motion.
Okay, so we've got a motion on the table to support the officer's recommendation from Councillor Jackson, seconded by Councillor Hounsell. Before we take a vote on that, could I ask, do we have any more contributions to the debate, please? No? Okay, so all those in favour of the motion to support the officer's recommendation? So that's 4, and against? So that motion has fallen. Could I ask for a second motion from somebody? Councillor Hughes.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to propose that we overturn the officer's recommendation.
Okay, thank you. We have talked about making that delegate to permit,
yes,
so that
absolutely.
some conditions can be applied.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so your reasons, policy reasons. Sorry, sorry, the planning officer just wants to come in.
Thank you, Chair. If I just very quickly can just come in. I think in terms of the proposition, it just needs to be clear whether it's being said that there's no harm the committee's view is that there's no harm to the setting of the listed building and conservation area, or that there is harm, but it's outweighed by the public benefits. And I think that needs to be clear.
Okay, thank you. And same conditions as were on the previous permission? Delegate to permit with...
For me, yes, absolutely.
Right, okay, so seconder. Sorry, you seconding?
I'd like to second that, please.
Right, thank you. Councillor Malloy?
Just going to say, of those conditions from the last time, I suppose the first one will fall away because it was the temporary permission. So, but apart from those, all the others. So there were the conditions about hours of use, restricted use, so to do with music and so on, and lighting, and also about not having any fire pits or barbecues. Okay, so are you comfortable with all those? Let's turn to the person who's proposed.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think we need to acknowledge that, obviously, as Councillor Davis pointed out, licensing have control and input on use of the outdoor space, and they can apply for change of use. But whatever conditions we can put on to limit or restrict that usage, I think it would be important. Yes.
So can I the legal officer would like to speak?
Sorry, just a very quick one. In terms of the reasons for the proposal, just so it's clear for the minutes, I understand it's your view the public benefits outweigh the impacts on the heritage impact. Just so we get it clear in the minutes, I understand from the debate that the public benefits are the anticipated uplift to the customer of the pub, thus providing a boost for local economy, and additional employment in relation to the provision of the outdoor bar. Is that right, or are there any other factors you wanted to add in?
No, I think that covers it.
Okay, thanks.
I mean, Lucy may want to add something to that. I don't know. As seconding.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to clarify the conditions, actually, if I can.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I would really like to see them exactly as written for the previous permit, as we've said, excluding number 1, which, as you've stated, actually, the hours of use up to 10 p.m. and the other ones. I want to be clear that the financial contribution for highways is part of the agreement, and also, is it possible to condition any improvement in disabled access or not?
I think we agreed no, but I'll just turn to my left for judgment on that. Well, it's a planning matter, I guess. But...
So shall I repeat it? I'd really like to be clear that the conditions are exactly as written with the previous permit, the temporary permit, that the financial contribution is agreed, as stated in the officer's report, and just to pick up that point about whether we can condition any improvements to disabled access or not.
And I think what we said was that would be a separate planning consent. I think that's what I've heard now, but if I could turn to Chris for that.
Thank you, Chair. It would be very difficult to condition improvements to disabled access because those works would most likely be quite significant in their own right. That's quite a steep gradient down those stairs, so I imagine, well, it would certainly be too steep for a ramp. So there would need to be quite a substantial sort of zigzag structure with its own supporting framework. It would be quite a substantial piece of work, and that would really require an application in its own right.
Yeah, so I think what we're saying is delegate to permit with the conditions, except for the first one, and ensuring that we secure the financial contribution as previously stated. Councillor Jackson?
I'm still thinking about this question of economic viability. Is there any lighting on this deck? And if there is not, would that be a separate planning application to install any sort of lighting, which of course also relates to the question of the hours of operation? Because if there's no lighting out there, it's part of the year, it's not going to be much use.
What's the condition on lighting, Councillor Hall?
So I could answer that. There is some existing lighting fairly modest, but there is a condition that says no new external lighting shall be installed without full details of the proposed lighting scheme. So that was the previous condition.
And presumably this bar's been being used successfully for the best more than a year now, so it must be fine to sit outside after dark there. Right. Anybody else? Anything to say? Councillor McPhee.
A couple of people over there have made derogatory comments about the bar. I don't know whether we can put anything about that, or that would just be part of the delegate that the planning officer would make some comments.
I don't know whether we can ask for that to be part of the delegate to permit that there can be some discussions about softening the appearance of the bar, or...
It's certainly something that could be conditioned, Chair. I mean, obviously, there's a limit to how far that could go. But so I wouldn't want the condition to be too prescriptive, because it may be that some of those matters can't be secured. But a condition requiring a scheme for further works to the bar structure to be approved by the council, a condition of that nature is possible.
Thank you. So, Councillor Hughes, are you happy to add that one in?
Absolutely. I mean, we're all adults here. I'm sure that the owner can see the benefits of improving the appearance of the bar in the same way as we can. So I'm sure that a sensible conversation could take place between the officer and the owner for that.
Thank you. And seconder, Councillor Hodge, happy with that?
Happy with that, thank you.
Right. So unless we've got any more contributions, no, I'll move to the vote. So the motion on the table is to overturn the officer's recommendation for the reasons stated, delegate to permit with conditions as stated, proposed by Councillor Hughes, seconded by Councillor Hodge. All those in favour? And against? Abstentions? So that is carried, so we have delegate to permit. Thank you very much, everybody. Can I just clarify your vote, Councillor Simmons? Can I clarify your vote? You vote? Yeah. Sorry, Karina just didn't see it. Does anybody need a break? The last one shouldn't take 2 minutes, so happy to carry on. Okay, so Councillor Hodge has stepped away from the committee for this one, and if I could ask the officer to make the presentation, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is a tree notice to fell a weeping ash tree in the Bath Conservation Area. The reason why it has come to committee today is because it is councillor's tree, and that's part of our protocol. Reasons have been provided to remove this tree, and that is because it is suffering from ash dieback. The tree is in the southeasternmost corner of the property outlined on the left-hand side of your screen, and it overhangs Park Gardens. And this is the tree itself. It's got a background of various other evergreen trees, so that you can see that the dead twigs. This shows a silhouette with the sky behind, which shows the extent of the ash dieback. The council only has two options in respect of a tree notification, and that's either make a tree preservation order or raise no objection to the proposed removal of the tree. Given the condition of the tree, my recommendation to the committee is that the no objection is raised to the removal of the tree.
Thank you very much. Do you have any questions? Oh, no speakers, sorry, I should say. Do we have any questions? No, move straight to the debate, and I'll ask Councillor Molloy as local ward councillor to open the debate.
Yeah, okay, thank you. No, I have no objections to this. I think we should go with the planning officer's recommendation.
So is that a motion that you'll...
Well, unless anybody else wants to say anything.
Well, they still can do that, but...
Yeah, okay. I propose then that we vote for the recommendation.
Okay, lovely. And do you have a seconder for that? Councillor Jackson, thank you. So we have a motion on the table. Anybody else want to contribute anything before we take a vote? Okay, so the motion on the table is to accept the officer's recommendation from Councillor Molloy, seconded by Councillor Jackson. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you for waiting for that short. Right, moving on. Do members have any questions or comments on the appeals report? Oh yeah, sorry, could you get Councillor Hodge? Right, yeah, sorry. Item 9, appeals report. Do members have any questions or comments on the appeals report? Councillor Jackson.
It's not directly on any specific appeal result. I think, as usual, our officers have done a splendid job, and I can't remember which one it was the committee saw, but, you know, we generally get it right. Now, this leads on to another matter, though. The Keynsham application last time, I was wondering how many other councillors had received very nasty emails about the decision that we took, which we could, if we had made the opposite decision and refused the application for Minesmere Road, parcel number 5159, we'd have lost at appeal, I'm sure. So I was just wondering how widespread this problem is of nasty tweets, emails among colleagues.
Well, I had one email from a gentleman who was very upset about the decision, which I've chosen not to reply to. I don't know whether everybody had that email. Yeah. Councillor Hounsell.
Just to say, I probably had the same email. I did consider replying, but I then decided not to. The difficulty is trying to explain the planning process, which can seem very, very opaque even to us. So if somebody's really angry, I doubt if there's anything that could be said to alleviate that.
No, I agree. And there will always be one side that's unhappy with any decision we make. So, but I only had that one email. I didn't see anything else at all. I've known worse with other decisions. So, unless anyone else has got any other comments, the committee's asked to note the report, and the date of the next meeting will be Wednesday, 11th of January. Sorry, Councillor Hughes.
Sorry, I just one other issue I wanted to raise. You know, we all received the weekly list of planning applications. Recently, I didn't receive several of these. I did contact the head of planning and pointed this out, that 3 of the reports hadn't been issued. And I only found this out because I noticed that an application, quite an important application, had come up on my town council's agenda, and I hadn't seen it. So fortunately, I found it because of that. I did contact our head of planning and asked him about these weekly reports, and his response was that we should go online and look at them ourselves. I'm concerned with some of us have got very busy workloads, and it's easy to miss it unless we can get these reports through. So is there any way you could talk to planning to ensure that we do get these reports, and it isn't a case of putting an onus on councillors to go online and having to try and find the relevant applications?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. I'll take that forward. So we would like a push the notification rather than having to go and get it. Yeah, no problem.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so no other business. The next meeting will be on Wednesday, 11th of January. We've got no site visit I know of at the moment. And I'd just like to say Happy Christmas to everyone. Thank you very much for your hard work. I know this takes a lot of reading and a lot of anguish at times. So we'll see you next year. Happy New Year.